The Association of African Universities, AAU, Africa's apex higher education organization, invites stakeholders to its 15th quadrennial General Conference from 5th to the 8th of July 2021. The theme is the future of African higher education. The conference will be held virtually and hosted by the Government of Ghana under 6 sub-themes as follows. Sub-theme 1, the future of African higher education post-COVID-19. Sub-theme 2, contributions of African higher education institutions to addressing the challenges linked to the COVID-19 pandemic. Sub-theme 3, contributions of African higher education institutions in achieving sustainable development goals. Sub-theme 4, funding of African higher education institutions in the face of unpredictable economy. Sub-theme 5, mainstreaming e-learning and the digital divide. Sub-theme 6, contributions of the diaspora to African higher education. Expected participants include ministries of higher education, academics, researchers and research organizations, regional economic communities, regional educational bodies like IUCEA, CAMES, and SARUWA, the organized private sector and captains of industry, development partners, and other education stakeholders. The AAU's 15th Quadrennial General Conference is here. To register, kindly go to the link below, and for further enquiries, please visit the website www.event.aau.org/GenCon or send an email to secgen@aau.org and copy info@aau.org. AAU, the voice of higher education in Africa.
L'Association des universités africaines, AUA, l'organisation faîtière de l'enseignement supérieur en Afrique, invite toutes les parties prenantes à sa 15e conférence générale quadriennale qui se tiendra du 5 au 8 juillet 2021. Le thème de cette conférence est l'avenir de l'enseignement supérieur africain. La conférence se tiendra virtuellement et se sera accueillie par le gouvernement du Ghana. Elle comprend les 6 sous-thèmes principaux suivants. Sous-thème 1, l'avenir de l'enseignement supérieur africain après la COVID-19. Sous-thème 2, contribution des établissements d'enseignement supérieur africains pour le relevé des défis liés à la pandémie COVID-19. Sous-thème 3, contribution des établissements d'enseignement supérieur africains à la réalisation des objectifs de développement durable. Sous-thème 4, financement des établissements d'enseignement supérieur africains face à une économie imprévisible. Sous-thème 5, intégration de l'apprentissage en ligne et de la fracture numérique. Sous-thème 6, contribution de la diaspora à l'enseignement supérieur africain. Les participants attendus comprenant entre autres les ministères de l'enseignement supérieur, des universitaires, les chercheurs et organismes de recherche en Afrique et au-delà, les organismes éducatifs régionaux comme la IUCEA, la CAMES, la SARUWA, le secteur privé organisé et les chefs d'industrie, les partenaires de développement, agences et organisations internationales et d'autres acteurs de l'éducation. La 15e conférence générale quadriennale de l'AUA est là. Pour vous inscrire et participer, veuillez visiter la tinyurl.com/AAUGC 2021 et pour plus d'informations sur la conférence, veuillez visiter le site web event.aau.org/GenCon ou envoyer un courriel à secgen@aau.org et copier info@aau.org. L'AUA, la voie de l'enseignement supérieur en Afrique.
Financial independence of grassroots women, encouraging Nigerian business women to diversify into agriculture, establishment of Abelstone Microfinance Bank for the grassroots women entrepreneurs, through agriculture clusters of the women group leverage on value chain addition to agriculture products for exports and utilization of agricultural waste products in useful products, thus improving foreign exchange earnings of individuals and of course our country while achieving a cleaner environment. Happy 2021 Women International Women's Day. I choose to challenge.
Hello, my name is Irene Kiwia. I am Tanzanian. The African Free Trade Agreement is such an amazing tool because for the first time ever, it's giving Africans a platform that will allow to increase access to markets, which is a big thing. When we look at where the continent is at today, where Africa trades at 11% between Africa, this is intra-Africa trade, we still have a long way to go. And there has been many challenges that, now with African Free Trade Agreement, we are looking or we are hoping to see a major shift.
Je suis Madame Issimatu Ishola, béninoise résidant au Sénégal. Je m'investis pleinement dans l'accompagnement des femmes en vue de leur autonomisation. Et à ce titre, je suis vice-présidente du réseau entrepreneurial des femmes africaines, REFA Sénégal, où je suis chargée du leadership et du développement durable. Et je pense que la réussite de la ZLECAF ne peut se faire sans une forte implication des femmes. Vive la journée.
I think unless women are involved, there will not be success in our endeavors. Thank you.
I'm the founder and CEO of Millennium Immobilier, which is a construction and development company specializing in green buildings and material production. Alors j'espère aussi que la ZLECAF nous permettra, pour les femmes qui sont dans cette industrie un peu dite masculine, que j'espère qu'elle nous permettra de grandir.
I hope. The interpreters regret the sound quality is too poor to be able to interpret properly for you. We can barely hear.
L'industrie de la construction et qui peine à trouver une place. Et avec notre réseau panafricain que nous développons, je pense que nous pourrons avoir des résultats.
Good day. My name is Princess Layo Kewu. Happy International Women's Day. I'm the Managing Director, Chief Executive of FAE Limited, the largest envelope manufacturer in Africa. The innovation that I brought into the country is tamper-proof envelopes. And I also have the RFID that will protect all your ATM cards. I encourage my fellow women that what a man can do, a woman can do thrice. We are the fastest moving train now, and we need to encourage each other that we should all come in on board to become industrialists. I wish myself and my fellow women happy International Women's Day. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Claire Matukanya Daka, and I am a data scientist at Adalab Africa, as well as a co-founder and head of AI at the AI Center of Excellence, also known as AIC.
La maison les femmes entrepreneurs et femmes d'affaires de la CEDEAO. Je salue ici l'initiative.
I would like to salute this initiative. When we talk about cross-border trade, since we shall be reducing tariff and non-tariff barriers, it will make it possible for women to export their goods, to be more open to external trade, and not to have to face the type of harassment and other obstacles that they face at the border. It will mean that they can do their trade in a much more formal way. If I could describe it as such, there will be the rules that are respected, and they need to be educated about these rules, and we can raise awareness so that they are fully aware of all the advantages of AFCFTA.
And I am the managing director and founder of Crown Natures Nigeria. Crown Natures Nigeria is a large-scale textile apparel manufacturing company, providing apparel from Nigeria and servicing the local market. Since we began this operation, we've engaged a lot of women. We have engaged women who have skill and women without skill, and I've actually taught them the skill and gainfully employed them. African Continental Free Trade Area has actually, I believe, would help women businesses to strive within Africa. And because that enables us to take our market from our local market into the continent market, where we can actually be able to sell more of what we produce and what we sell. And that definitely will strengthen women's businesses and will enable us to share ideas with other women within the African sub-region. This definitely, we believe, will be a good development for African women and women in general.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Karine Claudette Témé, je suis camerounaise. Comment est-ce que je compte tirer parti
Hello, I am from Cameroon. Now, how do I expect to share in the AFCFTA? Well, first of all, to be a part of it as quickly as possible, to be amongst those who are promoting inter-African trade through a significant reduction in the barriers that are obstacles to this trade. Secondly, making it possible for self-empowerment and the empowerment of women. The interpreter apologizes. There's music in the background. This is an extremely impossible exercise.
Good day, my name is Manfa Samkoloba, the CEO of Botswana Exporters and Manufacturers Association. In short, it's called BEMA. I'm also the SADC Women in Business country head for the Botswana chapter. We are looking forward to ensuring that we also are part and parcel of ensuring that there is maximum benefits from the AFCFTA for women in Africa, because we have what it takes and there is a lot of potential. So we do believe that the AFCFTA provision for women could take us a long way as African women to position ourselves much better, to trade better, to even take leadership positions that we believe could be very much effective to ensure that Africa develops itself, Africa remains sustainable, and will reach maximum trade benefits that we can as Africa.
It is never too late to make a healthy resolution. My name is Pauline Okubasu, the CEO and founder of Azarico. We also work closely with female farmers to ensure that good agricultural practices and sustainable production and consumption practices are adhered to. The Africa Continental Free Trade Area provides a larger playing field within the intra-Africa market space, where we get more access to customers who can experience the sweetness produced by our soil through blending in the different products, vegetables and fruits from the different countries. We're able to access more suppliers. We're able to access more partners, development partners that we can grow with and build the GDP of Kenya. I encourage all women to choose to challenge in their areas of influence.
My name is Rose Rono, and I'm an international trade professional based in Nairobi, Kenya. Some of my achievements include implementation of the single window system, implementation of the World Trade Organization Trade Facilitation Agreement, and the Information for Trade portal in Kenya. In terms of leveraging on the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, the role that I play is on capacity building for women and SMEs, and also automation of international trade processes to ensure the reduction of non-tariff barriers. I want to wish you a happy International Women's Day 2021.
Je m'appelle Mawabo Take Mireille. Je travaille au lieu dit Carrousel à Yaoundé au Cameroun. Je suis très heureuse d'entendre qu'il y a une plateforme de commerce pour la femme, une plateforme qui valorise, qui aide la femme dans son avancée. Et déjà, j'espère vraiment m'y retrouver, vraiment que cette plateforme m'aidera à résoudre les problèmes que je rencontre quotidiennement sur le terrain et que cette plateforme m'aidera à évoluer.
I am Mrs. Daphne Shalkolma, the chairperson of C-Link Pilot 2. Happy International Women's Day, Africa. The African Continental Free Trade Area, being a very novel project, has become the greatest achievement for us in the 21st century in Africa. In the Protocol on Trade in Services, states that state parties are mandated to improve the export capacity of both formal and informal sector with particular attention to micro, small and medium enterprises, women and youth service suppliers. This underscores the essence of gender parity and underscores the meaningfulness and inclusiveness of women in the continental free trade area.
For me, Folorosho, I am the Secretary General of the African Ship Owners Association. The trade that is needed to acquire vessels is what the IFCTA is bringing on board. Nobody buys ships to park. There's no parking space for ships. We need trade. We need cargo to be able to buy ships and more ships by Africans. Therefore, for the African ship owner, AFCTA is a great initiative and should be supported by all. For women in particular, what does it do for us? Oh, it makes sure that there are more vessels for our female seafarers to come on board and have their sea time.
Hi, my name is Pajet Miruke Ayodija. I'm an electrical engineer by profession. I'm a Nigerian, but I'm based in the Republic of Benin. 20 years ago, we started a company called ACWH Group, which is an ICT company. A few years back, we had two projects. The first one was called Equity, which was to bring together the ICT companies in the West African zone. The second one was also called Huawei, which was to bring together the business women in the West African countries also. It was a time to share ideas, to find out ways to exchange products and services, and there were a lot of B2B meetings. It was a very successful program. And then when I heard about the AFC FTA program, it was very interesting to know that yes, this is expanding to the African region where business people can move within the countries, exchange products, exchange services without being hindered in any way.
My name is Irene Nakalyango and I'm the founder of ABC Energy Global, a company based in Uganda. We offer a wide range of business support services to our clients, and our slogan is very simple: your destiny, our purpose, which speaks volumes in relation to our targeted approach to each client. We do whatever we do innovatively, and that is led by a team of young, purposeful, driven individuals. As a company, we are ready to partake of the opportunities in the continental free trade area. We would like to call on partners to visit our website, abcenergyglobal.com, to see how best to work with us. We believe that synergies are critical in order to harness the opportunities in the continental free trade area.
Hi, my name is John Miano. I am a director of Miamu Properties Limited, a real estate company here in Kenya. I'm also a member of OWIT in Kenya, Organization of Women in International Trade. I have gone through seminars through OWIT, I've gone through development courses through OWIT, and I've been able to get partnership with a big company here in Kenya called Centum Group, where we do their property sales and marketing. AFCTA is an open door in the diaspora for us. Entrepreneurship is a journey. Just take the first step, don't be afraid. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. You may take over, and as you do that, just to let our participants know that since this is a virtual summit, it is part of our normal exchange when we have a summit to share details, business cards and so forth. So please make use of the chat platform to do that if you want to exchange details with fellow participants, just for you to know that the chat line is for that. With that, Councillor Cooper, please, you may take over. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Sam. And let me say how delightful it is to be with all of us this morning and this afternoon, depending on where on the globe we are, to discuss this very important topic. This session on investment paradigm shifts for sustainable transformation and development is key to the implementation of a changed circumstance that will improve the investment climate in our various countries. Now, the organizers have given us certain questions to be addressed, but all of these questions, and I will read them out, fall under a threshold overarching theme, and that overarching theme is, what do we see from a practical, implementable standpoint, the solutions to improving the existing paradigm and shift it in a manner that will bring forward the anticipated results for the AFCTFA. So our panel of distinguished persons here will be discussing various elements of this, and we will also invite at an appropriate time interventions from the floor to help us with comments and questions that would help to elaborate on these. So the questions essentially are these. What should new investment strategies look like? Consider traditional FDIs, current FDI, and new shifts under AFTA. How could AFTA most effectively impact intra-African investment? How would AFTA impact bilateral cooperation investments and FDIs from industrialized countries? How do we ensure bankability without curtailing practices and stringent conditions? Should Africa develop its own metrics relating to credit rating and ease of doing business indexing systems? In what ways do we ensure job creation, technology transfer, and trade and export for finished products? How can African tertiary institutions position themselves to produce the skill sets needed to drive the transformation? How should the landscape for foreign development finance look like with the role of AFTA? What are the potentials for foreign direct investments under AFTA? How will AFTA affect investments in intermediary and final trade? And then we invited our panel to comment on how host governments, good governance, and investment climates will determine the direction of investment flows, and on multilateral and bilateral agencies in supporting and investing in Africa under AFTA. looking particularly at some of the already established institutions that we have and how their roles have been in the development of our continent. And we'll also address questions pertaining to academia and what role academia could play in setting appropriate boundaries for this. Now we have our list of distinguished speakers on this panel, but in keeping with the spirit of yesterday, International Women's Day, I will ask the indulgence of colleagues on the panel to allow us to have the only lady on our panel present first her thoughts on certain aspects of the various questions that have been put forward. And that is Treasure Mafanga. Ms. Mafanga was the first female appointed to serve as CEO in the Federation of Swaziland Employers and Chamber of Commerce. And she was chief of the Office for Africa of the International Trade Center, which is, as you know, a joint agency of the WTO and the United Nations based in Geneva, a position she held from 2008 to 2011. She also served as Director for Trade and Industry at the AAU, responsible for trade, industry, customs, and mineral resources, as well as for AFTA negotiations and the African Union commodity strategy. She has served and is serving now as a strategic advisor to the Kingdom of Eswatini on various continental initiatives, including AFTA. It's my pleasure to invite her to make a brief intervention, and that will be followed by the Honorable Dr. Kande Yamkela, who I will introduce appropriately.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper, for that very kind introduction. May I, first of all, just thank the organizers for inviting me. I'm representing the African Electronic Trade Group as Executive Director and Acting COO at the moment. I'm in the Kingdom of Eswatini and very honored to be given the first slot to speak by virtue of my gender. Now, I'd like to say that what a distinguished panel that I'm a part of, and I thought that I would share some perspectives on the issues relating to mobilizing investments at this time in Africa, a very special moment, given the whole process of moving forward on phase 2 in terms of defining the rules around investment and the investment landscape, as well as, I think, the very great excitement by the African private sector, large and small businesses, about what opportunities are going to be unlocked. I thought that the way I would like to target my response to this question is that there is no doubt that there is a lot of optimism about the opportunities in the market. And I believe that throughout this summit, private sector summit, we will hear different ideas around this enormous opportunity. And I want to zoom in, if you may allow me, on this issue of job creation. And because we know that this is in fact maybe the elephant in the room question on our continent right now. We are all very much aware of the demographics of the continent, a very youthful continent. And what we have actually, what has been often referred to as a ticking time bomb, which was before COVID-19. As of last year, 2020, the AU has published a report with ECA reporting that we probably lost an additional 20 million formal sector jobs. But now what we also have is as a continent that has been stabilizing, a lot of development in terms of macroeconomic and fiscal discipline has been taking hold. There is a lot of optimism about this environment, but sadly a phenomenon of largely jobless growth. So what are we going to do about this? What are the opportunities that we can unlock that are basically accelerated or inspired by the AFCFTA. Now, what I want to do is just take you a little bit under the bonnet of our economy on the continent. We all know that our statistics do not cover the huge, economic activity that is happening in the informal sector. A study that was done by McKinsey and AUDA NEPAD, which is one of our partners in 2020, basically trying to understand better what were the impacts, the early impacts of COVID-19 on the small businesses across the continent, found that there are about 96 million micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. And only about 8% of them are actually SMEs in terms of a very broad definition of this particular group. As you know, the continent doesn't have a standard definition for small and medium-sized enterprises. And this is really the first point in terms of policy. But we want to appreciate that the African Union has actually entered the fray of stakeholders who are looking at promoting the sector, and there is a strategy which has been worked on together with the regional economic communities to look deeper in what could be done in this area. But what I wanted to say to you is that the findings are that this sector, as we may call it informal, is actually the core job creator. Out of about, in terms of, if you look at the landscape, about 66 million formal sector jobs are basically coming from multinational corporations, about 60 million from the public sector. This is the civil service. And about, 360 million are coming from the MSMEs. Very fragile jobs, admittedly, but I think for us as the A-Trade group, this is where we need to start. And we believe that the AFCFTA creates an opportunity for us to leverage technologies to connect small businesses, to trade with each other across this vast continent of ours. And we very much appreciate that a lot of focus has been on investments in infrastructure. And we agree that our infrastructure is not adequate fully. However, we believe that the approach that we should take is looking at how we can create a business case for these investments that we want to see in infrastructure. Because what we basically are seeing is a lot of emphasis on roads, on airports, on hotels, etc., which is important. But I think we also want to see the capacity building, the investments in human capital. And this is where I believe the institutions of higher learning are playing an important role. But I will say in a moment what I think could be done better in terms of the ecosystem that we see for supporting MSMEs. We also want to see greater investment in health and education, even at the basic level, because the world has changed. We're talking about, the fourth industrial revolution, and you find that our curricula is very much still stuck in the past. The education sector has not really transformed and changed that much in the past 100 years. So we see opportunities for that, and we believe that the private sector could be the catalyst for calling for what it is that they actually need from these institutions which are investing a great deal in human capital development. We also think that the boosting digital infrastructure is key. We know that this, of course, would have to come with energy, projects, and there are a number of significant plans that a number of countries have. We also have the Grand Inga Dam as a flagship initiative of the AU. But we also believe that, the importance of changing our mindset and looking at renewable energies. And I know that there are going to be panelists who can speak more eloquently to this area. But what we see is that this is the moment where we can basically put greater emphasis on those areas. I also want to talk about the Pan-African quality infrastructure. This is another aspect of infrastructure in development, which often gets put by the wayside. But if we are going to industrialize at the scale that we want, and we're going to have quality products, made in Africa products, they need to be we need an ecosystem to support the SMEs SMEs. And every country has institutions that have been established in this area, but I think there's a serious underinvestment in those institutions in terms of their ability to serve the SME sector, as well as the rest of the business community. Now, I want to just say that when it comes to capacity building and what we want to see, especially for the entrepreneurs who are really the drivers of this change that we want to see in the AFCFTA, is yes, definitely digital literacy is important, but what we have found as the A-Trade group from our research is that what is key is really changing the mindset from the traditional kind of baseline targets that we tend to see towards a more ambitious and definitive mindset that basically is going to leapfrog and make these businesses have sustainable growth and also to be competitive within the continent and globally as well. We want to appreciate that a lot of development partners, governments, and stakeholders have invested in the SME sector, but we are sadly not seeing really the sustainable growth. We're not seeing the emergence of so many large companies, because every company starts small. We're not seeing that growth. And so as the A-Trade group, we are basically reaching out and creating a web of partnerships across the continent with business associations, with government entities, to basically reconfigure and revisit how this SME ecosystem can be strengthened. And we have an open approach, and that's why I'm so glad to be speaking today, because we believe that being coordinated by the institutions that have a mandate for this at the African Union and at the regional level is excellent. But what we really need is the push that comes from the private sector that brings basically the ideas, that brings the technology and know-how, that brings also the experience. And here I want to make a special mention of the diaspora, because we are a diaspora-led initiative, and I don't think we have really harnessed that positive input sufficiently in all the countries. I know some countries on the continent have created enabling policies that are welcoming for diaspora knowledge skills investments to be brought in to be part of the development process. But I think some countries are sort of following behind, and I think this is a very important opportunity that we should be looking at together. And this platform, I think, is an excellent expression of what can be done when we join forces together as Africans. Now, I want to just speak finally about something concrete that may explain what I'm talking to you about. And that is that when we saw the emerging landscape and the move towards consolidating an African market, the African Electronic Trade Group decided to basically launch at the market a Pan-African e-commerce platform called Sokoku. Sokoku.Africa was named for that by the African Union. And I think my brothers and sisters from East Africa will know that in Kiswahili, this means large market, central market. It also means unity. So what we're doing through this initiative is basically saying all other regions have been able to come up with their large platforms. We can quote some of the ones from the US and from China. What about Africa? So we basically are bringing forward Sokoku.Africa in a partnership and, with what we call a shared prosperity model. So it's a different business model. It's one that is exciting. It's one also where a lot of our focus is actually on inclusiveness, especially the women entrepreneurs and the youth entrepreneurs. It's inclusive of all sectors and the various regional value chains. And in fact, as part of our concrete commitment to the importance of celebrating Africa Women's Day, we had an announcement by our CEO and chairman yesterday that we are basically going out to sponsor 10,000 SMEs that are women-owned to register for free in our platform. Our platform is designed for SMEs, so it is generally affordable. However, with COVID-19, we're all conscious that any support to get started will make a difference. So this is something I just wanted to share with you, and to also say that for youth, we have a program where we are sponsoring 150 youth startups to attend the second Intra-African Trade Fair in Kigali later this year. This is a partnership that we have with the African Union, and we are very pleased to be able to basically announce that we have this competition for youth startups that we are running. We'll share the details in our chat if anyone's interested. But the most important thing is investing in women, investing in youth, providing the platforms for us all to work together to build the kind of transparency that we want to see in the marketplace, to bring trade information, to trade using local currencies, to have basically the best, logistics and infrastructure that can move the goods around the continent. So I want to pause there by just saying that I'm excited to be part of this conversation. And being a private sector summit, I think we really should be talking about concrete examples, that we can put on the table, that we can all support to move the investment agenda forward, which is basically about impact investment, patient capital, looking long term and working together to create the kind of environment that will basically spur job creation, employment opportunities for as many African citizens as we can. I thank you for the opportunity to just share some thoughts, but I'm here to learn as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam. The intervention you've made is very pertinent, and I like the direction that you headed in, and it's consistent with how we think that we should proceed during these discussions, to come up with concrete ideas and suggestions that could help us reach the targets that we've been set. With 1.2 billion people, a market of that size, certainly we have a lot to do and can achieve them. Thank you very much, much appreciated. We'll come back to you on some of the points that you've raised and some of the other ideas that will evolve from the conversations. I'd like to introduce at this time the Honorable Dr. Kanda Yamkola, who is a Sierra Leonean Member of Parliament and former United Nations Undersecretary General and Chair of the United Nations Energy from 2008 to 2015. And he's the founding CEO and Special Representative of the Secretary General of the United Nations on Sustainable Energy for All. He's a distinguished development economist and an expert in agricultural economics. He led the coordination of the United Nations response to energy issues. Prior to joining the UN, he was the Minister of Trade, Industry, and State Enterprises for the Republic of Sierra Leone, and was an assistant professor at Michigan State University, one of the Big Ten in the United States. He holds a Bachelor's of Science degree in General Agriculture from Unjala University College, Sierra Leone, a Master of Science degree in Agricultural Economics from Cornell University, and a PhD in Agricultural Economics from the University of Illinois. He's previously served 2 terms as the Director General of UNIDO, the United Nations Industrial Development Organization. Welcome, Dr. Yamkela. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to share some ideas with this August group. As I said, they are ideas to maybe help introduce some thoughts into your debates this afternoon. As the short resume presented has suggested, I have spent the good part of the last 3 decades working on industrialization issues, energy, and some of what our colleague just talked about, support to small and medium enterprises across the world. Today, I want to focus on just 2 areas, industrialization and also the transition to achieving access to energy in our continent, and I'll focus on sub-Saharan Africa minus South Africa. I'll say a little bit about South Africa in a moment. We were asked to talk about paradigm shift to a more transformative economic situation in our subcontinent, taking into consideration the opportunities presented by the Continental Free Trade Area. Well, first of all, for Sub-Saharan Africa, we're still stuck. Our economies are still stuck in a paradigm that has existed now for almost 3 to 4 decades. And that is that we're stuck in a commodity dependence, commodity growth cycle. When commodity prices go up suddenly, there's a spurt of economic activity in our economies in Sub-Saharan Africa. Commodity prices fall, we're again in crisis. And we've seen that even at the time, in the last decade in particular, where most research has shown that 6 out of 10 fastest growing countries in the world or economies in the world are in Africa. Those growth, 6 fast growing economies, their growth has been based on a commodity boom. And we've seen what has happened with the incidence of COVID. Our situation has not changed structurally. Our economies have not changed structurally significantly in the last 40 years. Give you some numbers here. Our share of global manufacturing value added is between 2 to 3%, compared to Asia Pacific, 34%, Latin America, 5%. Of course, the OECD countries, 55%. So we are 2 to 3% in terms of global manufacturing value added. If you look at the average share of manufacturing value added in our domestic GDP, it's always hovers around 5 to 10% for even the well-performing countries in Sub-Saharan Africa outside of omitting South Africa. 70% of our exports have been commodity. So that story has not changed. So if you're talking about a paradigm shift, that's one key paradigm we should change. And you will see that in the last decade and a half, whether it was me when I was at the heading UNIDO, or it was Carlos Lopez when he was heading the UNECA, or now Akim Adesina, president of the African Development Bank, we have all emphasized that Africa has no choice but to industrialize. Industrialization is key in the new paradigm shift. We must move to value addition. We must move to wealth creation. And if you put us in that new paradigm of industrialization, private sector-led industrialization, our thinking then also has to change from what we have now inherited from the international development community of poverty reduction to one of competitiveness and growth and wealth creation. Competitiveness and wealth creation. I spent now over 2 decades traveling around the world, visiting factories in different regions, watching the Asians achieve that structural change, visiting their factories, their research centers, their universities. The thinking there is different from our thinking. Our thinking has been conditioned to one of poverty reduction. So what do? Our economics is based on small projects to help the poor in communities, unlike the Asian perspective, which is one of competitiveness, trade, innovation, and growth. When you think in the Asian manner, your thinking is bigger, more transformative, and then you think about all the necessary infrastructure that will deliver that kind of transformation, rather than the small projects, village-based, rather than modern, transformative, innovative thinking. So that would be my first proposition to those in this forum, that we have to change that mindset from one of a receivership mentality to one of wealth creation, industrialization, competitiveness, to trade, in fact, in higher value products. That's my first proposition to you. that in this 21st century, particularly in the decade 2020 to 2030, we need a different mindset for those who are driving our economic growth and economic policies in Africa. So one of wealth creation, competitiveness, trade in higher value products. And that trade can be within Africa, it can be without, it doesn't matter, because sometimes the same rules apply. You got to take care of your cost. You have to have the enabling environment that will incentivize those who want to invest in the productive sectors to invest, rather than those who just want to lend money for merchandising, for trading products from other countries. So it's a total mindset shift that we have to have. And some of what the previous speaker said matters here, which means then you have to build a financial architecture that will allow the kind of lending that will go into factories, that will go into agribusiness, rather than just the lending that says, I'll lend you money since you're bringing a container in. I'll lend you money because you have to put your house as collateral. In manufacturing and bigger investment, you don't have to put your house. It is based on, the lending will be based on due diligence of the business model that you present. That is when we'll get significant lending into manufacturing, into the infrastructure that will support such manufacturing. So first proposition, mindset shift into industrialization, and it is not new. I spent good time in the UN partnering with the African Union, from His Excellency Kunare to Jamping and others. In fact, I can tell you that I invited the deputy chair, Erasmus Wencha, to Vienna back in 2009, because I had just come back from the Asian Development Bank and I saw them present Vision 2050 for Asian countries, dividing Asia into sub-regions, and what they had to do over a 20-30 year period to capture the the fourth industrial revolution, the transition to green growth. And I called him up, I said, my brother, you have to come and listen to what the Asians have done. And I did the seminar in Vienna, and I'm not surprised a few years later that he drove this idea of a Vision 2063 for the African Union. Now, to help that industrialization vision to be achieved, we must also be part of the global energy transition. Currently in Africa, 620 million Africans do not have electricity. Yeah, it is the only continent where energy poverty is so deep. The projections, in fact, are still very there. It will still be the only continent by 2030 that will have huge energy deficits. You cannot talk about industrialization, even taking advantage of the digital economy, without access to affordable, reliable, sustainable energy solutions. You cannot. The digital economy is driven by electrons. Those electrons come from energy, electrification. Industrialization requires reliable, affordable energy. If you go back to the Industrial Revolution, it was driven by coal. If you go back to the creation of the European Union, it was driven by coal and steel. Coal was an energy source. So here now in this 21st century, the global discourse is about this global energy transition. Yes, they talk about a transition to net zero by 2050. Africa has to be part of that dialogue. And that's the role I play now globally. As you heard from my CV, I led UNIDO. At the same time, I picked up the energy agenda. When I spoke to heads of state, President Kagame, President Obasanjo at that time, President Ouattara, several of them in Africa, they say, hey, my brother, you know our industrialization problem and you know our energy problems. Lead both. And they backed me. The African Union backed me to drive those. Therefore, my role there was to drive sustainable energy, sustainable development goal number 7 for universal access to energy, and sustainable development goal number 9. We fought to have 9 in, and in 9 to have industrialization included. Carlos Lopez, myself, Donald Kabaruka, and others. We fought that industrialization must appear because we see our destiny relies on that. So quickly on the energy. What will drive our energy transition? And we have to look at those numbers, because whatever we do, those numbers will impact where we stand in this 21st century. So I give you some numbers to think about. About 4 to 5, there will be 4 to 5 key drivers of our energy transition. Number one will be demographics. When you look at demographics, 1 out of 2 new births from now till 2040 will be an African. 1 out of every 2. By 2025, the African population will be more than China. And by 2050, there will be 2 billion of us. You can look at that as a demographic dividend, or it could be calamity, because we need significant job growth. We need wealth growth, but it means that that demographic will also drive the demand for energy, and of course, will create a market opportunity for finished products across countries. So demographics will drive our energy transition, and of course, need to drive our economic policy and give us a sense of urgency about the need for job creation. The second one is urbanization. Currently, we have the highest urbanization rates. In fact, some estimate that our current urbanization rate is even faster than the urbanization rate for the 2 decades of boom in China. But the Chinese urbanization was driven by industrialization. When people came to the city, there were jobs, but not in our case. We have our people packing into cities. We don't have the industries to absorb. As our sister said, 60% of them end up in the informal sector. But at the same time, they're living in cities without access to clean water, without regular power supply. And by 2040, we will be adding another 500 million Africans to the urban population. Think about it. Packed in the cities, no jobs. Or it could be a marketing opportunity, that they're close enough, we can supply them with finished goods. Again, the link to industrialization. Or you can also say, somebody asks, how will universities play? If they need skills, if they're going to be productively employed in industries. They need skills if they're going to be part of the digital economy. So how would we structure our curricula to ensure that this massive demographic growth, but also urbanization, in fact, becomes a demographic dividend, as it was in the case of India, Vietnam, and some Asian countries, that the younger population became the engines of industrialization, skilled labor, and so on. Otherwise, it will be a crisis. The fourth, of course, will be expansion of our economy. Some estimate that our economy might quadruple, grow by 4 times in 2040. I hope that will be because of industrialization, not commodity growth. So that growth, that quadrupling of our economy in sub-Saharan Africa means that there's going to be need for even more energy. We need to go from the current installed capacity of about 120 to 130 gigawatts to 300 to 400 gigawatts. Think about it, by how much 3 times more energy we're going to need. We're going to have to triple the rate of electrification from 20 million a year to 60 million a year, if in fact we're going to achieve our ambitions in 2063. The last one is transportation. The demand for transport will increase significantly. The International Energy Agency estimates that our car fleet demand will double or triple. Yeah, you can see some others. They've even talked about by how much our demand for televisions, our demand for air conditioning will increase in this same period by 2040. But transportation is going to be big. So there's this debate now. Can Africa leapfrog into e-mobility? Some of us believe it can. We believe Kenya is ready because it has good energy source. If they can tap into geothermal, we believe Tanzania, Mozambique with their gas, but now Senegal, Nigeria, South Africa, of course, we can leapfrog into e-mobility and lead that revolution, because indeed we'll have to provide power for an additional 1 billion people within the next 30 years, because our population will be about 2 billion by 2050. So in summary, we are in transition as a continent. How we manage that transition and the extent to which we empower the private sector to drive that transition will determine whether we're relevant in the global economy in this 21st century. Already I said, where the relevance comes in is where you are in global manufacturing value added. If we are 2%, 10, 20 years down the road, we've not shifted one bit. It also means that the trade will be in higher value products. We should also know today that you don't have to produce an entire product yourself. You merely have to produce a component to be part of a global value chain. So I give the example of cotton. We have C4 countries, Benin, Niger, Burkina Faso, Cote d'Ivoire. They all produce cotton, but not all of them can have a garment industry. Some can specialize in gray fabric. That's already one stage of value addition. Others can finish and produce the Gucci shirts. So again, part of the challenge for the continental free trade area is how do we map out comparative advantages so we can specialize in producing components. You know, I have an iPhone here. Everybody knows that no one country produces all the components for an iPhone or the Boeing A3 and the Airbus A380. There are thousands of components coming in. So again, in Africa, we should specialize. Countries can specialize in components. If you take batteries, I give you one example and I'll keep quiet now. Africa is sitting on almost 50% of the world's cobalt, 70% of the world's platinum group, yeah, and a significant portion, 40 to 50% of manganese. You need all of these minerals to power the energy transition for the rest of the world. So you tell me, you the private sector, why should Africa not be the #1 battery producers if we're sitting on the key components they need for the new battery systems? In fact, South African companies right now are gearing up to lead what we call the green hydrogen revolution, generating hydrogen, making fuel cells using renewables. Because why? South Africa sits on the world's 70% of the platinum group of metals. So there is opportunity, there is hope, but it depends finally on that smart public-private partnership. Our politics has to be right. If you don't, I spent so many years in the global system, and 4 years ago, I did the crazy thing of deciding to go into politics in Africa. But people ask me, why would you do that? I say, because I have seen from Asia to Europe, to Latin America, what political leadership means for transformation. If the politics is not right, if those making public policy do not know what you and I are talking about competitiveness, innovation, and at the digital economy, they will keep us stuck in where we are today. And that's the way it's been for 40 years. Highest poverty rate, highest energy poverty rate, commodity dependent, and not supporting our private sector, our research centers to help us leapfrog into the 21st century, into the 4th industrial revolution. Thank you very much.
The West African Center for Crop Improvement, WACI, in collaboration with other relevant international stakeholders, held the launch of the African Plant Breeders Association (APBA) and the Maiden International Conference on the theme Advancement in Classical Breeding and Application of Modern Breeding Tools for Food and Nutrition Security in Africa at the University of Ghana, Legon. The 3-day conference activities included keynote addresses from distinguished members of the plant breeding community, parallel sessions on current issues affecting some selected crops, plenary sessions chaired by seasoned plant breeders, workshops facilitated by international stakeholders on issues such as demand-led variety design, modeling and application of genomic selection, as well as excellence in breeding platforms. There were also poster sessions where researchers showcased their contributions to plant breeding in Africa, as well as a dinner on the second day for participants of the conference. The event concluded with the election of the association's international executives, which includes Professor Eric Dankwa, the founding director of WACI, as well as Dr. Julia Sibia from the University of KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa. There was also a discussion of the association's proposed constitution, as well as the venue for the next meeting, which will be at the Makerere University in Uganda 2021. The African Plant Breeders Association, APBA, amongst its other objectives, aims at providing a platform for plant breeders across the globe to collaborate on various issues related to food security in Africa.
Welcome to another educative episode of AgriLink, the show that promotes agriculture in Africa, with a focus on the University of Cape Coast, particularly the School of Agriculture. This episode will focus on the Agricultural Engineering Department and look at the various initiatives taken to promote agriculture in Africa.
My name is Dr. Robert Sapon Amwa. I'm the head of Department Agric Engineering. The Department of Agric Engineering was established in 1991 as one of the academic departments in the School of Agriculture. As an academic discipline, we are engaged in the training of students, and I mean agriculture students, in the application of engineering principles to facilitate agricultural operations. We also do research in agricultural engineering related technologies and disseminate these technologies through students to farmers for application on the field. Our areas of study and research cover 4 key specialist areas, which include farm power and machinery engineering, soil and water engineering, post-harvest engineering, and farm structures and environmental control. Now, within these units, we run a number of programs, both at the BSc level and also at the PhD level. At the BSc level, together with the other departments, we run BSc in General Agriculture. And in this program, we teach engineering-related courses for the BSc students. We also run a special BSc Agro-Processing program, which is meant to prepare the students for a career in the food industry. At the graduate level, we have PhD and MPhil programs in irrigation, engineering, and management. We also have MPhil, food and post-harvest technology, and then we run agricultural mechanization technology for MPhil and PhD students. The department has been doing research in a number of areas across the various disciplines I've mentioned. In irrigation engineering, we have been championing research in deficit irrigation, which involves the application of water less than what the crop actually needs, about 80% of what the crop actually needs, in order to determine whether the deficit will have some stresses on the crop performance and whether it will also compromise the yield or not. The intention of such a research is to cut down on the amount of water that is used for irrigation, because water is becoming scarce and there is competition for the use of water for other purposes. So if we are able for various crops determine that they can accommodate less than what is actually required naturally, then we can save water. We have also been doing research in the application of some models to predict crop yield. FAO has developed models like aqua crop model or crop watt model. These models are based on, or they use some environmental parameters like the temperature, the rainfall, the sunshine, and other environmental conditions in particular areas to determine how they affect or they would affect particular crops. And so by use of these models, we are able to predict for a particular year the yield of crops and advise farmers in that respect. We also have been doing research in food and post-harvest technology. In food technology, we have been developing new food products by fortifying foods like gari with nutrients that enrich them. So we have been enriching gari with, for example, sweet potato. Sweet potato does contain beta-carotene, which is good for the eye, and it also improves the immune system. By enriching gari, for example, with sweet potato, we improve its nutrient value. You know, gari is sometimes mixed with oil and sold by the street size. We have found that sweet potato, you know, oil does contain beta-carotene, but it is known through research that the beta-carotene content in sweet potato is much higher. And in fact, sweet potato is one of the healthiest foods in the world. And so we do research to enrich gari and other foodstuffs with some particular nutrients, like sweet potato, like torvum, like avocado, in order to enrich their nutrient composition. We have been also carrying out research in the solar drying of crops. Crops like cassava is dried for the production of starch, and for fermented cassava, which is processed into what we traditionally call konkonte. We carry out research on the drying rate, the drying time, and optimize these drying conditions in order not to compromise the nutrient value of these crops during drying. So we do solar drying, we do sun drying, we do oven drying for various kinds of crops. We have also been doing research on the non-destructive assessment of the quality of many produce. We are currently calibrating an instrument that could be used for quick assessment of the quality of some foodstuffs. Recently there were issues with food fraud, food adulteration, and etc. Through such research, we are able to make a very quick assessment of the quality of the produce. In fact, we have various platforms through which we disseminate our research findings. There are various platforms through which we disseminate our research findings. First of all, we work directly with farmers, especially farmers in the central region and western region, to disseminate technologies to them. We have disseminated, for example, technologies, sweet potato storage technologies to sweet potato farmers at Koforidia in the central region. We disseminate our research findings through a number of platforms. First of all, we work directly with farmers in farmer field fora and use those platforms to train farmers on the new technologies, new and proven technologies that we find. For example, we have disseminated storage technologies to sweet potato farmers at Koforidua in the central region on the Jukwa Road. We have also disseminated irrigation technologies to vegetable farmers at Darampong, also in the central region. And currently we are working with farmers at Tibrebe on the Anglo Gold operational area to disseminate spray tube irrigation technologies to the farmers. Now, besides working with farmers, we also disseminate our technologies through a platform we call Supervised Enterprise Project. This is a special project run by the School of Agriculture, through which we train students on new technologies and they go out to disseminate the technologies to farmers. Now, besides that, internationally, we do a number of publications in reputable journals. Now, when you publish in a journal and you see that you are cited by an author elsewhere, the implication is that they are studying your research for possible application in other areas. So through these platforms, we disseminate our technologies. We also attend conferences and make presentations through which we disseminate our technologies throughout the world. Yeah, when we disseminate our findings, especially to farmers, these are farmers we are linked with. And so we continuously monitor the performance of the technologies that we disseminate to them to see whether or not they are implementing them and whether or not the technologies are actually working. And so we do follow-up studies to understand the impact of the technologies that we extend to our farmers. Agriculture in Africa, and for that matter Ghana, is not making much headway, and there are a number of factors that account for this low performance of agriculture. First of all, our land tenure system means that farmers do not have access to large tracts of land. The farm sizes in Africa are quite small. In many cases, they are just about less than 2 hectares. And on such a small farmland, the farmer cannot operate commercially. The farming system is based on subsistence level, and so he only grows to feed the family with a little excess, with a little surplus for sale. So one problem is that our farming system is subsistence based. Now, the second reason why we are not making major strides is that we have not injected technology like control and modified atmosphere techniques, all of which reduce post-harvest losses. But if you come down to our part of the world, you see that we are not employing the new and exciting technologies that are driving agriculture elsewhere. And so for our agricultural system, for our agriculture to make a headway, it is important that we inject into agriculture new and improved technologies. Adoption of mechanization is actually an evolutionary process. And there are a number of factors that determine the adoption rate. Some of the factors are socioeconomic, others are cultural, whilst others are environmental factors. Economically, our farmers are, so to speak, poor. Mechanization, however, is capital intensive, requiring very costly equipment like tractors and its implements. These are very expensive, so the ordinary farmer cannot afford to purchase a tractor For that reason, they are not able to mechanize their operations. And the second reason being that their farm sizes are too small to justify the use of expensive equipment like tractors. Mechanized equipment are normally designed for large-scale operations. And when used on small farmlands, economically it doesn't pay because economies of scale does not favor the use of such expensive equipment on small farmlands. For this reason, mechanization is not making a headway in our part of the world. Another reason why farmers are not adopting mechanization is also probably the fear of labor substitution, because once you bring an equipment like a planter into a community, it means that it's going to displace labor. Recently there was an observation in the northern part of Ghana where someone brought a 2-row planter to grow cereals, but the community were complaining that he's going to deprive women in that community of their sources of livelihood. You know, in our part of the world, there is also an argument that probably there is little justification in mechanizing our agriculture because labor is cheap. And obviously our farmlands are also too small. So if labor is that cheap, the question is, why mechanize agriculture? Nonetheless, research has shown recently that the demand for mechanization is increasing in Ghana, even on small-scale farmlands. On small-scale farmlands, we could practice what we call selective mechanization. What it means is that we may not mechanize all the operations. We may not fully mechanize all the operations from plowing to harrowing, weeding, and harvesting. But there are some of the unit operations that are very difficult to execute manually. And for such operations, it is obviously needed to mechanize them. And so the demand for the mechanization of some operations called selective mechanization is actually gaining grounds in Ghana. We have a lot of partnership with institutions in Ghana and outside Ghana. Within Ghana, our partner institution is the KNUST, which is a sister agricultural engineering department. So we have a lot of partnerships for the exchange of staff for tuition, and also we collaborate in various project works. Besides that, we have partnership with some organizations in Ghana. For example, we have been working closely with Dizengov, which is an irrigation company, for the supply of irrigation equipment for training and installation of irrigation equipment. We also have partnership with a similar company we call Famous Irrigation, also in Accra. Besides that, we have partnerships across Africa. There is a platform we call RUForum. RUForum means Regional Universities Forum for capacity building in Africa. So we have a number of member universities in Africa, of which the University of Cape Coast is a member. And through that platform, we have linkages with a number of universities in Africa, especially in East Africa, for the exchange of staff and students, and we also do collaborative research. We have also linkages with other universities in Europe. Currently, we are working with Queen's University in the UK for the development of a non-destructive technique for the assessment of quality of produce. We are also working in partnership with Wismar University in Germany for the development